Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 1:40 a.m. Central Time on the 29th of July 2021. Kind of rousted off the couch. Guys, got breaking news. Huge earthquake has struck up in Alaska. 8.0 range event. Let's get a display capture turned on. We have buoys in event mode. We have possible tsunamis generated. We are at the 8.0 level. And it's 8.2. It's the biggest earthquake in years since 2018. We're up at a place called Perryville, Alaska. Perryville, Alaska. We're going to get the coordinates, put it in. First, we're going to go look at the National Data Buoy Center and tsunami.gov. These are the current buoys in motion, being picked up, of course, across the entire North Pacific, Northeast Pacific, going over to the U.S. Tsunami Warning Center. They do have event details and warnings, info statements, and watches going out. As far as Hawaii, watch number 1, we're going to click on these, see what they have to say. Preliminary magnitude 8.1, now upgraded to 8.2, has occurred in the Alaskan Peninsula, 4:16, that's their local time. We're going to stay alert for further information. There's possibly that a tsunami watch advisory or warning could be issued later for Guam, all the way across the Pacific. So we're talking about a Pacific-wide tsunami warning. That, if it exists all the way over to Guam, we have to go over also and check to see if there's going to be a tsunami that could spread, possibly, I'm not saying it is, could possibly spread out in the other direction, depending on the angle of the earthquake, the angle of the uplift, or again, there could be a fall or a rise or a fall that happens that generates a wave that goes out. So looking at the buoys, we watch for a propagation of the wave to spread out from the earthquake epicenter out from, again, in the direction, the way it's going to go. Pretty obvious, right? So it goes out and away, and whichever way it's going, the buoys should light up. Now that all being said, I'm going to get the coordinates for the earthquake. Go put them in over on Google Earth. Also going to show it to you where it is on the plate boundary. So the plate boundary is the red line here on the USGS. Okay, just remember the red line because we're going to reference that later on throughout the rest of this update. Putting the coordinates in, we're going to copy, paste, and search. Now we are back at the 8.0 level, and we were looking for 8.0 level to return last week. In the West Pacific, of all places, so we are in the Northeast Pacific, but we are back at 8. We're back at our location next to the volcano that we were talking about, it was about a year ago, I think. This volcano right here, which I will turn on the Smithsonian place marks for, Veniaminoff volcano. And Veniaminoff erupted last year, erupted 3 years ago as well. But we're not talking about an eruption, we're talking about an 8.0 range earthquake, following a series of deep earthquakes that were flurrying off on the other side of the Pacific, down here where our letter D is. We all need to pay attention to where this wave is going. We're just a short distance, geologically speaking, of course, across maybe 1,000 miles from the west coast of the United States. If the wave were to propagate that way, we would be talking about a very serious situation on the west coast of the United States if a wave is being generated. We have to wait to see what the professionals finally weigh in on with the wave. However, with an 8.2, let's go zoom in on the spot. And I'm going to mark this for future reference since this is the largest earthquake in several years' time for the whole planet. And we will have to reference this. This may go up or down now. The magnitude may go up or down, but I'm going to mark it currently at 8.2. 8.2 on July 29th, 2021. So we're back at it. This follows the solar storm and the solar activity that's gone in an increase. When we're talking about solar flares, we're also talking about Earth-facing coronal holes, strong solar wind that's associated with that. Now, some of my viewers were just telling me earlier today about a new solar event that had happened, and I brought up the previous 8.0 range earthquakes that had happened in the last time that we had lots of solar activity. That goes back a few years because we've been in a solar minimum. 8.2 quake. Let's go back over and take a look at the Tsunami Warning Center, see what the other info statements are. Let's look at, for instance, Guam. Okay, Guam, Rota, Taipan, that's the one I already clicked on. American Samoa, Hawaii. Okay, this is going to the emergency management in the state of Hawaii. Tsunami watch is issued for the state of Hawaii, effective at 8:25 p.m. HST, that's their local time. They have the preliminary magnitude of 8.1. Based on all available data, tsunami may have been generated by this quake that could be destructive on the coastal areas even far from the epicenter. An investigation is underway to determine if there is a tsunami threat to Hawaii. If the tsunami waves impact Hawaii, the estimated earliest arrival of the first tsunami wave is 12:53 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. 12:53 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. Well, okay. That makes it a little easier for the people in Hawaii. Now let's go turn on the Hawaiian earthquakes and just zoom in and see. I don't know what our local time is there now in Hawaii. I guess I could go look that up. We should probably do that. So, local time in Hawaii is 8:47. So, within 4 hours. Now, people debate the speed that tsunamis travel at. Oh, by the way, my warning, I had a secondary warning going for a 7.0 range quake, possibly mid-range 7, to strike here at Haida Gwaii to Hecate Strait. And a new earthquake has just been reported in there, 4.6. But anyway, we get back to the big quake. The speed that a tsunami wave can travel at depends on the depth of the water, the way it's spreading out, the angle of the earthquake. There's a lot of factors. But in general, it's the speed of a jetliner when it's spreading out across the ocean. When it gets in close to land, the water draws back, it slows down, the wave builds and comes in pretty fast. You've seen the tsunami videos in other countries, for instance, when the wave comes in, but spreading across the ocean can reach up to the speeds of a jetliner, which is 400 miles an hour, 500, 600 miles an hour, depending on, again, the angle of the push of the wave. So let's just say 500 miles an hour, between 400 and 600, 500. So that's the speed of a jet. So however long it takes a jet to fly from Alaska down to Hawaii is the time I would tell you to watch. Same for the West Coast. However long it takes to fly from up here in Alaska down to the West Coast, straight line. Again, the wave's not going to do anything weird when it comes to traveling. It should spread out in all directions, but it should go in the direction that the uplift occurred. I don't know the direction. They will from the stations and the way the waves arrive, the arrival times. Okay, that gets way beyond even what I could do. That's what the professionals should be doing. So the earthquake struck at 6:15 UTC, which is 30 minutes ago. So we are 30 minutes in on a massive earthquake, the biggest earthquake in years since 2018. So there it is. It's a somewhat shallow earthquake. It's 4.0 range, 40 kilometer range, 8.2, 40 kilometer. So that's shallow. That was likely felt all the way across Alaska, likely felt in Anchorage right here. This is Anchorage in this little bay or harbor on the north side. And you see the proximity. We're right next to an island called Kodiak. Now, my other warning for last week was at Kodiak. So, now both areas have been hit. Kodiak and the area here in between Haida Gwaii and Hecate Strait. The other thing that we were looking for was a return back to 8.0 range quakes. And like I said, it's been almost 3 years since we've had 8.0 range. And here we are. We're in the week where all the deep earthquakes are hammering off. On the other side of the plate, all the way down here next to Fiji. You see there's a spread of activity that's gone down south of New Zealand and, of course, over to the west all the way to Indonesia. We have to go to the USGS plate boundary map. Let's go back over there. And all the way down here, series of deep earthquakes across from Fiji over to Papua New Guinea, over to Indonesia, all the way across the Mideast over to Afghanistan, beyond all the way over to Italy, and deep earthquakes reaching the other direction to the east, going over to South America, northern South America, and Mexico. You want to talk about a spread of deep quakes? The past several days, all my viewers have noticed, and you can see them raised, several of them, raised high off the globe here now. This is the last 6 days, but in the last 7, the whole spread went all the way over to Europe, which you can see here now, marked in red. That is pretty much the whole planet. I would say 3/4 of the planet had deep earthquake activity down below it over the past several days. Again, you can see it on the screen here now, raised high off the globe. So now, on the north side, all around it, deep earthquakes. On the north side, we get a big break. I'm going to have to remember this for future forecasting purposes, that the big breaks tend to happen between our sets of deep quakes. But in this case, the deep quakes 3/4 of the whole planet. Again, I'll explain to you again. From here and here over at South America, across Fiji, across Papua New Guinea, across Indonesia, Afghanistan, Italy. All of this had deep earthquake activity down below it. Oh, and add in Japan and Kamchatka up here to the north as well. So all of this plus this had deep activity below it, pushing up on the underside of the plate. Now, why does that matter? Well, let me show you. Here's what I think's happening down below the plate. I think concentric waves are forming in on each other, VLF, almost electric, but we're talking about a physical shock wave coming up from the core of the Earth vibrating like a bass drum. And it's not a ball of metal or a molten ball of anything. It's plasma energy vibrating. Plasma energy, a plasma torch, hot enough to melt anything, vaporize any element known to man. But when the waves focus in on each other, they have nowhere to go. We're down in the magma and the asthenosphere down below the plate. And it hammers in and focuses in on itself and hammers up into the underside of the plate. Now imagine this over 500 or 1,000 miles, hammering up down below. Then that's where the deep earthquakes are. A spread starts to take place from those deep quakes. So then we get something like this in a wave tank, where one deep quake happens and it puts out a wave. Then another deep quake happens and it puts out a wave. And they go into the tank and they focus back in on each other again. This is spreading out and the wave gets bigger. More amplitude, more power to it. But instead of jostling around like chaotic waves in a pool, they actually become organized in a standing wave. And imagine these as each earthquake popping off along the tank. Now the tank is the red lines, or are the red lines, that go around the West Pacific and up here past Japan, all the way over to Europe. And that's the spread the earthquakes took over the past several days. Now we get the big break on the north side as the wave is focused in on the north side of the Pacific. This stands to reason. I have a warning going here for a huge earthquake, and right here is where the huge earthquake just struck. Now that's over 200 miles, but this is the quake we're looking for. It's the first 8 in years, and there it is, 8.2. Let's go back and check the tsunami.gov, the Tsunami Warning Center. Let's hit refresh. They still have it as red, which means potential impacts. Let's go look on this. Breakpoint start, Cape Decision, Alaska. Hold on. View the bulletin by clicking on the breakpoint marker. Well, I'm clicking on it. Oh, it just has the advisories now issued. I've never seen this before. Okay, wow. Okay, so looks like we also have this. Well, it's not giving us much. It's just telling us breakpoint start, breakpoint end. I don't know what these are. I've never had to deal with these little place marks on the tsunami.gov map. I would assume, but assuming sometimes makes an ass between you and me, I would assume that these are related to the actual wave, where they're projected to go to, and where we're actually getting wave return coming from. So the red would maybe be where the wave is coming from, where they're actually getting a wave return. So there is a tsunami. The red means warning. So, and they have warning here at Smolgapask, Alaska. So warning means warning, red means warning. That means tsunami. We have to go back over to tsunami.gov at this point and then also go to the National Data Buoy Center. I'm going to hit refresh on this. Oh, Okay, now look. You guys can see the additional spread of the shock wave from the earthquake. Now, I just told you, the wave itself spreads at the speed of a jetliner. Now, we know a jetliner could not have flown from Alaska all the way over to Japan and go from Alaska all the way over to the west coast of the United States. And we know a jetliner could not have flown all the way from Alaska down to Hawaii, where we're getting a signal down in Hawaii. This is the shock wave from the actual earthquake. It takes about an hour to spread out across the whole area. It's been about 45 minutes since the big quake hit. This just lets you know the size of the area that's actually receiving a shock wave from the quake. It's half the Pacific has received this. This does not normally happen with regular size quakes or even 7.0 range quakes. This only happens with what we call mega quakes. So a megaquake is a huge earthquake that has an effect, a shockwave effect, almost instantaneous, within an hour. Across the whole Pacific, or wherever the big earthquake happens, we had a megaquake in Japan in 2011. Now this earthquake, the magnitude may be elevated up with this, look at the response that the buoys are having. They're picking up the shockwave. So it means it could be a bigger quake. Secondarily, this is a spot to watch now. We know an area, a potential wave-affected area, from the coast of Japan all the way down off the coast of the United States. Look where it goes to. It goes down right on the coast of Oregon. I'm going to go ahead and tell my viewers now. Okay, look, it can't hurt. If you know any family out there in Oregon, in Washington, Vancouver Island, you might want to send them a text message or give them a call. Here's what you're going to tell them. Well, I don't know if it's going to be on the news tonight. You know how the news is lately, unless they can make a buck on it or scare people in the middle of the day when they can cash in with commercials. They don't come on. Like they're going to pull Anderson Cooper out of his apartment to come report on a quake up in Alaska that could have a tsunami that's coming into the West Coast. They'll pull him up after the wave hits. They'll have him in a nice suit and get him out there to report on it. But so I'm calling you now to let you know that there has been an 8.2 and a tsunami warning has been issued for points in Alaska. Now there's points on the West Coast, low-lying points along the coast, where if I had family, I'd be calling them right now. Okay? That's my advice. Now, you could tell them, again, we don't know if a wave is fully coming at you yet, but it's probably a good idea to tune in maybe on the Weather Channel. I don't know where else to tell you. You could tune into Dutch Sense, and what we'd be doing here is the same thing probably that everybody in the world would be doing. We'd be waiting for this info to update, or a press release, or a news conference to be called by the professionals from the USGS, and to be on all the news almost immediately if a wave is coming towards the west coast of the United States. If a wave is heading out across the Alaskan Aleutian Island chain or down to Hawaii, well, that's also significant. So we need to pay attention to that too. The Hawaii info statement is an advisory or watch, not a warning. Now, the non-U.S. Canada Pacific threat message, let's see what that says. This message is issued for information only, okay, in support of the UNESCO Pacific Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System. All right, we'll take this one a little bit less, but evaluation, earthquake with preliminary magnitude of 8.1, no duh. And widespread hazardous tsunami waves are possible according to this UNESCO-funded whatever we want to call that. So we'll just wait for the U.S. Tsunami Warning Center to keep updated on this. Let's hit refresh again just to see if there's new info. Doesn't look like there's very much else. We're waiting for updates on that. Let's go back and look at the advisory for Alaska and the west coast of the United States. Southeast Alaska, the inner and outer coast from Cape Decision, Alaska to Cape Fairweather. Okay, that does make sense. Those are the place marks that we saw, those little divots on the map that I didn't know what they were. That's what these are. So Cape Decision, South Alaska and the Alaska Peninsula, Pacific coast from Cape Fairweather, Alaska to Hinchinbrook Entrance, Alaska, and the Aleutian Islands, Samalga Pass, Alaska, to Amchitka Pass, Alaska. So those are warned areas. Forecasts of tsunami activity. Tsunami activity is forecasted to start at the following locations at these specified times. Now, this is in military time, but I'll just tell you, 2200 hours is 10 p.m. 10:55, so we're still talking about an hour maybe. And then we go over to midnight, and then we're going over to just after midnight, like 12:10 a.m., and then we go to 1 a.m. Okay. Guys, I'm going to tell you, they've got this out, so you're going to have to pay attention to that and make your own decisions based upon what to do in the face of a tsunami. Now, I've already told my viewers this 1,000 times. You need to check, and I even told you this in this previous update that I did this week, based on the fact that we're looking for 8s to come back this past week. How to check your location for your elevation. I'm just going to show you down here on the coast of Oregon. We're going to randomly zoom in. We got a bunch of hotspots there. But I'm just going to zoom in here on Florence, Oregon, just randomly. Now, of course, we're right at sea level. I'm going to move my mouse over and look down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. This is the way I would tell my elevation. Lower right-hand corner of the screen, as I move my mouse around, you'll see it says ELEV, and it says 5 feet down here on the right-hand side, right here at sea level, right? We go down and we go right into the ocean. We're at 0, right? Okay, the 0 is sea level. So here's sea level, here's 5 feet. Now once we get over here, we're at 90 feet, 80 or 90 feet. Now there's no way it's going to be a 90-foot size wave coming in. It wasn't a 9.0 range quake like we saw in Japan, for instance. And so we know it's not going to be a massive wave that came in, but look right here. Here's sea level again, right? Now look, as I move my mouse in, look, it stays at sea level. We're 5 feet above sea level here, 5 feet. So if a wave were to come in that was 5 foot or more, steady wave that is, it would come in and inundate this area and flood it. Now the houses right here along the shore would be affected. The ones that were right up here wouldn't. The houses right along the shore where it's 10 and 11 feet and they go right down and they got a dock on the backside, okay? So you could have issues with your docks. That's what happened back in 2011 when the big Japan earthquake happened. In 2011, a 8.9, upgraded to 9.0, it was originally a 9, struck over in Japan. And a tsunami came across the Pacific, and it hit the west coast of the United States. When it hit, it went into these areas, just like what I was just showing you, where there's docks, and we go in here, and it goes up the river a little bit. And I want to say at least one person died in the tsunamis that hit the west coast of the United States in 2011. And it was from the rushing wave that came into these inner harbors and washed out the docks and the boats. And it was intense. It wasn't just a little bit, wasn't just a little wave, guys. It was a pretty intense wave. I want to say maybe 5 feet high. You wouldn't think a 5 foot high wave would do much at all, but it was rushing and torrenting in with great force and power. So it was a 5 foot high tsunami on the west coast of the United States from a megaquake across the Pacific all the way over in Japan. All the way over here. Now I'm going to go back over and show you on my map. You see we have yellow arrows right here. And we go across and we go over to right there. Now, is it any coincidence that we go back to the buoys and look? The buoys are in event mode, going from where I have a yellow arrow, starting on the coast of Japan, going over to the coast of the United States. That's the way the shock wave spreads. And we watch for a back and forth to happen when a big earthquake happens over in Japan. Now, this one happened up in Alaska, so I'm going to have to now watch for activity big time to increase in the United States. We are about to go through it, and I don't just think here in the U.S. When we're dealing with an 8 up in Alaska, we're dealing with big time unrest on the planet, not just in the United States incoming. But we have activity up here to our northwest, and you see which way the arrows point from there? Right? They go right over into Canada, down into the United States, and across the North American craton. We're going to have to watch for a dramatic increase in activity. Probably, and I say probably because I don't have many examples to go on 8.0 activity up here in the last 10 years, but the last several times Well, let's see. I would say we would have to watch for 6.0 range activity to come into California on land. I'm having to do this forecast in my mind here real time, so forgive me for having to pause and think about it for a second, but looking at the middle point between the current sets of earthquakes, we get right down here, our halfway point between our 8 and our 5 down in the coast of Mexico. That puts California right in the middle of the mix. And not only does it put California in the middle of the mix, it puts the creeping section of the San Andreas, the South Bay area, the Hayward Fault, going as far south as Monterey Bay and as far north as Eureka, 200-mile stretch from Eureka, California, all the way down to Monterey Bay. And that's where we're going to have to watch, the halfway point between the sets of quakes. 6 should be coming in. After that, a spread should go across the craton in the 5.0 range, which means Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas will most likely see some major activity. The 5s should come in from the northwest. Let me add in Yellowstone, Idaho. I would just put you on warning right now. There's about to be 2 to 3 5s that go down across the plate in the next several days, 7 to 10 days, but I'll put it at 7. 7 days from now, going down across the plate, Idaho, Yellowstone, going down to Colorado, down to Texas, should see at least near 5.0. Let's put it at 4.9s. With California getting a 6. Over in a populated area, we're talking on land. This shouldn't be out in the ocean. It should be on land. The craton is being displaced. We're already seeing the results. We have a 4.6 right in the middle of our warned area up here on the north side. I issued a warning for 7-ish to be coming in here. I said it's going to be a huge earthquake. Get ready for it to be striking there. Now here we are, and we're back over here, and we have an 8, the first one in 3 years. Well, 2018 is the last 8 I recall that struck all the way down here, and it was a deep earthquake. Not many people felt it. This earthquake was likely felt across the region, certainly out at Kodiak, certainly along land right there on the Alaskan Peninsula. We're next to Seismopochnoi, Veniaminof volcano, of all things. Anytime a huge earthquake strikes next to a volcano, you can't rule out volcanic eruptions. You can't. Not now. Maybe in a few days we could. But right now, with a big displacement on the red line of the plate boundary, let's go show you the red line again here. Up here, that right next to this, quite literally right next to this, on land right here, a volcano that started to erupt last year. So when it shows activity next to Veniaminof, I watch at Veniaminof just in case. We watch spreading out from that, going down to the United States. We have ourselves a tsunami warning going on right now. Not just a watch. We've actually got a warning. This watch is just like in the weather. You have a watch, you're watching out for it, it hasn't formed yet, you don't know if it's going to. A warning is different. Warning means it's been spotted, it's imminent, it's been detected, we're watching out for it, we're warning the people in the area. That's the difference between a watch and a warning. Remember that. So where do we have the watches going? We have the watches going all the way out where the orange and yellow are, and the orange and yellow. Okay, and the red is a warning. So far, they have the orange and yellows going out to the coast of Alaska, which is just north of Canada. Let's zoom in and show you. So we're on like a watch kind of thing going on, on a watch up here and the warning over to the west. That means most likely the wave is traveling mainly to the west, which means the break that happened, or the breaks that broke, fractured in a certain direction that sent the wave to the west-southwest. Now, I don't have any fault zones mapped there. If we go over and look on Google Earth, it looks pretty smooth actually up here. But we know it's not smooth along there. It's just not very well mapped with undersea bathymetric measurements. Again, it looks pretty grainy, doesn't it? You get out here and you have a lot more passes done by ships, but right through here, we're right next to the plate boundary. There's the volcano I was just talking about, Veniaminof volcano. If you're just now tuning in, the biggest earthquake in years has struck. A tsunami is spreading out across the Pacific. Warnings have been issued nearby going over into the Aleutian Island chain. Watches and advisories, if you will, all the way out over to Japan, all the way down to Hawaii, and all the way over to the coast of the United States. If you live on the West Coast, it's probably better to pay attention to your local emergency management at this point. They will be monitoring buoys that we don't have access to, or maybe getting real-time data quicker than we are even getting. So local tsunami warnings will be sounded if you're supposed to actually evacuate and hit the road. I would say at this time, since it takes several hours to get there, and since we would know before it gets to the west coast of the United States whether or not there's a significant size wave impacting the coast up north, that's what we would pay attention to before you leave. But I would call and warn people now and let them know, look, there's a tsunami that's been generated. There's an actual warning that's been issued up in Alaska, and it could spread as far south as Hawaii. And Hawaii, of course, is in the same distance that the west coast of the United States is. And if you know people in Hawaii, you gotta let them know. You gotta let them know. They're on the yellow watch level. Advisories, again, orange, yellow watch, red warning. Now we'll hit refresh on this and see if the info is updated. Okay, not much else going on. We got the other earthquakes from earlier over in the Philippines. But these right here, this is significant. It's not like we get a tsunami warning every week, every month, or even every year. Let's go back over and look at the buoy center again and see if any more buoys are picking up event modes anywhere. Oh, wow. Guys, okay, now this is really starting to get impressive. This doesn't normally happen. We've got ourselves all the buoys in event mode now off the east coast of the United States, going down to the eastern side of the Caribbean. The eastern edge of the North American craton is moving, and let me show you what is moving. This is very significant. So we'll go over here and show you how this is even happening. Over here on the east side of North America and down here in the Caribbean, right? Let me back it out here. Now, the USGS doesn't have anything over here on the east side of the United States, right? They've got the actual Laurentian, this is Laurentia, the North American plate. They've got the plate boundary out there at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, but they're omitting this. Okay, they're omitting the craton, and that really matters because look, where the buoys are now in event mode is where the wave has spread from and to, and over on the east coast of the United States, it spread out to the eastern edge of the accretionary belt, or the accretionary plain, the coastal plain, and then down across right through the Caribbean. And what's in the eastern Caribbean? The other edge of the plate, down here. Laurentia is being displaced right now as a wave is traveling across it. You know, there's a consortium of seismic data providers called IRIS. They absolutely can't stand me. They hate me. They really don't like me, guys. They've weighed in on it. They've been outspoken. They don't like me. But they put out these animations that are awesome from time to time. When a big earthquake hits somewhere else, and the arrival of the shock waves of the quake that lights up all the stations across the United States and North America, and they'll do it in red and blue so you can see the wave as it's coming in and traveling across. And it's really interesting and really cool looking. Now, that wave, as it spreads across the plate, that propagating wave will trigger these. So the wave has spread in a massive spread going from Japan all the way over to the east coast of the United States and the Caribbean. And we don't normally see the buoys go into event mode. That might be a wave that's detected by some seismic station somewhere. But if it's enough to displace the buoys, enough for them to actually vibrate and shake and pick it up as some kind of wave, it's not a actual wave in the ocean, not a water wave. We're talking about this seismic wave that's setting off the tsunamis across that vast of a distance within an hour of the earthquake. 1 hour wave travel time around the planet at this point and setting off these buoys. Man, it's impressive. That's a big earthquake. Now, I'd like to go over and look at the station information now. Now that we know that it's setting off stuff all the way across the United States on the opposite side of the plate, I just want to go see it. What does the USGS have for these stations? We have plenty of stations up in Alaska. So we need to find out what the ultimate magnitude is on this. The way you do that, or the way I do it, is I go look at all the stations. and I then get a good broad swath of all the stations, what they're reporting, we throw out the high end and we throw out the low end. And that gives us a good estimate of what the actual earthquake is, how, looking at 100 stations or so. So let's go down the list. We're going to use the local magnitude list, which is severely under what they're weighting this earthquake in at. First of all, the local magnitude list is a full magnitude under. It's 7.2. Man, what's up with that? Let's go down the list. Are there even any 8s on the list? Well, okay, these are not correct. Hey, their censorship program kicked in. Whoops. When a big earthquake hits, it's a long story on that. So this is not right, okay? 6s don't cause tsunamis to spread out and waves to be detected across the other side of the United States. Okay, that's just not. That's a bunch of hogwash, baloney. Okay, we got to throw all this info out. It's not correct. And look, their other local magnitude list, no stations contributed. Body magnitude list, let's go look at this. Yeah, there's no way. The 5, do you think it's a 5.0 earthquake? Please. Somebody's done some really real fudging on the numbers to get that. There's no way. There's just no way. Wow. I've never seen something that grotesquely incorrect for something so large, so close to the United States. No excuse. And I'm not some kind of awesome egghead computational wizard. There's just no excuse for this at this point when everything's automated and everything's, real time at this point. Especially up in Alaska, going down on the west coast of the United States. We're not talking about Timbuktu over in Papua New Guinea. We're talking about something where a wave takes 4 hours to get to us, where we have to be very aware of what it is, what size it is, how many stations are detecting. There's something wrong here. Right along there, guys. There's something wrong. When all those stations are showing 5s, we got a tsunami spreading out right now. And we can't get proper info. You go check how they're doing their computation, and there's no stations contributed at all for the computation that's made public. All right, that's troubling. We have to go back and watch now on our own. Let's go back over to tsunami.gov, hit refresh, see if the info's updated at all. They do have the tsunami warning up at the top of the page in bright red, of course. Let's go down and click on it, see what we've got. Tsunami warning. Can you click on it? Cannot click on it, but you can see down here. They have arrival times. They have messages or warnings. I guess we should probably click on the messages. Advisories, American Samoa, informational statements. I've got viewers all over the world, so I'd have to pretty much click on each one. Has any of this been updated? They have updated the magnitude to 8.2. Okay, tsunami activity is forecasted to start at the following locations at the specified times. Sitka, Kodiak, 23:55, Alaskan Daylight Time. What time is it now in Alaska? Let's go find out. Do I still have that window open? I do not have that window open. Alaska time. $11:19 p.m. Okay, all right, 11:19 p.m. And they are talking about it coming up within, now. Within 30 minutes. I don't know what size they're forecasting, guys. Yeah, no, I do not know what size. They're not really telling us much size. We'll find out very soon. It's been an hour. So whatever size there is, we will know very soon. You can see there's a distinct lack of wave heights or anything like that in these updates. So these are the advisories. The informational statements are they're less serious, an informational statement, letting us know what's going on. If there is a tsunami threat to Guam, Rota, Titan, the earliest impacts would be around 12:07 a.m. their time on Friday. Well, their time, of course, it's already Friday. So you guys are going to have to watch that for yourself because, let's go back over and look at the buoys. The buoys are in event mode all the way from the coast of Japan, back down across Hawaii, back over to the east coast of the United States, spreading out down to the Caribbean. If it goes any further, I'm going to be shocked if it goes any further than this. But going down to Hawaii, let's go click on the Hawaii informational statement. Advisory statement. Here's the advisory statement. Sorry, it's not an informational. This is actually an advisory. This is to the emergency management in the state of Hawaii. Based on all available data, tsunami may have been generated by this earthquake that could be destructive on the coastal areas even far from the epicenter. Investigation is underway. This is the same message. Earliest arrival time, 12:53 Hawaiian time. So we're getting there, guys. It take about 3 hours to 4 hours for it to get to you. And we're about an hour in. Could be damaging, they say. That's them. I'm just going to report it to you. They are saying it could be damaging. We'll know very soon, within the next few hours. Let me get the chat room on here really quick, because, sometimes the chat room can bring us information that I don't have or haven't seen or have missed or anything like that. If you're just now tuning in, an extremely large earthquake, the first 8 in years, has struck with a spreading tsunami up in the Alaskan Peninsula. There's the potential for it to go to the coast of the United States. There's the potential for it to go to the coast of Japan. There's the potential for it to go all the way down to Hawaii. I don't think it'll go that far. Potential's one thing. Actuality is another. So it probably will go as far out as the Aleutians, Central Aleutians, which is 1,000 miles, and it'll probably go 1,000 in the other direction. Let's go measure 1,000 from the earthquake so we can really get an idea of how far that is. It's not that far. So let's, again, 1,000 out from here. Well, this is in miles now. In miles. There is 1,000 right there. You know what? That fits. That fits with, hold on. Just to put it in perspective, we're going to go back over to the buoy center here. Or, I'm sorry, the tsunami warnings. Look where they've got the advisory going out to. Here's the warning, the red. The orange is the advisory. And then the orange is the advisory going in the other direction. 1,000 miles. Let's go measure 1,000 in the other direction just to make sure. Yep, check it out. All right. So I would watch as far south as the Hecate Strait. 1,000 miles. Here's 999. Takes us right to the edge of the Hecate Strait. 988. So watch through this whole section here and back across all the way to here. And then 1,000 miles out this direction, there's nothing to stop the wave from propagating further out to Hawaii, which makes further sense to me why they would issue a warning for Hawaii for the potential of some kind of destructive wave. Wait. Oh, screen capture's off? How did that happen? Oh, the chat room. Let's measure 1,000. Sorry, guys, I'm live. So, we're going to have a few snafus and errors as we're live. But let's measure now out. Now, you got to see everybody in the chat room complain about me not being on screen. Okay, so here's 1,000 miles in one direction. Thank you, Duchess. That was the Duchess letting me know, guys. Duchess letting me know. She saved the day. She should be asleep right now. I bet I woke her up. So here we are, 1,000 miles out here to the Aleutians and 1,000 miles over here to the Hecate Strait. We go back over and compare to the tsunami warnings, and here's the red, here's the orange. So that is a perfect match. Then, of course, unobstructed, heading due south, we watch out at Hawaii. I suppose the good news is that the chance of a wave reaching all the way down to like California or Oregon is less likely. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. That's a double negative, proper use. But not going to say it's not going to happen. I'm just going to tell you that the chances are it's probably going to go 1,000 miles in each direction, which is still huge, going over to the Aleutians, down to Hawaii, which is more than 1,000, and over to the coast of the United States, or north of it, up at Haida Gwaii, up at just north of Vancouver. It's the first tsunami we've had to worry about in this neck of the woods in years. It's the first 8 in years, and this comes after a series of deep earthquakes that's just been phenomenal to watch, hammering off over here in the West Pacific, going past Japan all the way over to Europe. Other activity is happening as I'm talking. I would say we're going through the seismic roof at this point because we got 5s popping off all the way down across New Zealand, going west over into the Solomon Islands. All of a sudden, past couple hours, look at it. All the white-colored earthquakes are the most recent. They just struck in the past few hours. So it's really starting to act up already. And you can expect on the west coast of the United States, 6.0 level activity coming rolling in on land very soon in the next several days. 7 days, I would think, or less. Where do we watch? Well, I'm already going to tell you, we're going to watch along the coast of California. Pretty basic, pretty easy. San Andreas, creeping section, Hayward Fault. The reason we're watching, it's the halfway point between the other noteworthy sized earthquakes on all sides. Find the triangulation point between all these sets of quakes. And then push in from the back side with a huge push, like this 8 that we see up here. But the triangulation point between these 3 other sets of smaller quakes, if we go down along the plate boundaries, again, that would put us right here in California. Just the general halfway point between the two. But then it's even easier to find the point. We go down along the coast, that's the San Andreas, the creeping section. So the San Andreas creeping section is the halfway point to receive this incoming wave that's going to be pretty big. I mean, we already know it's big, but the incoming wave is coming from somewhere else. Something caused this 8. And it's not that this 8 is going to cause activity down in the United States. It's that the activity that's coming in the United States and this current 8 here were both caused by a spreading, standing wave. Like the wave in the wave tank. And the deep earthquakes are pushing in from the underside of the plate. And the standing wave builds in power, builds in magnitude, builds in amplitude as you pump more energy like an accordion into the tank. And the tank is the plate boundary, or are the plate boundaries spreading out and away from where the deep earthquakes are all taking place over here. And it spreads up, over, and across. And that's exactly what's just dropped off an 8 up in Alaska, and what's going to drop off 6s down in California, and most likely 5s all the way across the North American craton in the next several days. So it's going to go from 8s to 6s. It's going to take a big step down. Again, it's not that the 8 is causing the 6s down in the United States. It's that this standing wave is going to spread out and follow the plate boundary, and it'll lose and diffuse energy along the way. So it will take a step down, but that's not that much of a step down. A 6 in California by a populated area. Hey, just got an earthquake over here right where the wave spread to on the buoys. Let's go back and look at the buoys. See where the buoys have gone over here onto the coast of Japan? They spread out all the way over here. Well, a new earthquake has just popped off right there where the wave spread to. Now that buoy on the coast of Japan's been lit up for about 30 minutes. So, I mean, I'm talking about an actual earthquake that just struck there where the wave just spread to. An earthquake struck out in the other direction where the wave spread to. So it stands to reason both directions are actually physically moving now after the break in the middle, which is the big one that's generated a tsunami that's spreading out across the area up here to the north. Every time I mention that, I got to go back over and check. Let's go back over and hit refresh on the tsunami.gov. And we've got a watch number 2. I think that's the same that I just clicked on. Yeah, it sure is. There's not much more for me to add to this. Let's read the recommended actions. Actions to protect human life and property will vary within tsunami warning areas and within tsunami advisory areas. If you are in a tsunami warning area, now the warning is imminent. The warning means there's something actually coming your way. An advisory and a watch are lesser. We're watching for it, right? So the warning: evacuate inland or to higher ground above and beyond designated tsunami hazard zones, or move to an upper floor of a multi-story building depending on your situation. You got to get to higher ground, or you get up in a building that can withstand a huge tsunami wave. That, if you guys ever watched any of the other videos of tsunami waves hitting buildings, the ones that do the best are the high-rise buildings, the big concrete parking structures, those kind of things do the best. Okay, so if you can get into a skyscraper and go up 20 floors, or if you can get into a parking garage and go up to the top, that usually is good enough. Assuming the wave isn't huge, which this shouldn't be a huge wave. It should be, like I said, a 5-foot, 10-foot wave at the most. But that's still big. My God, 5 and 10 is overkill, I think. But better to overkill on estimates than under. We'll wait for them to actually put a number on the wave. They don't have numbers on the wave, so that's interesting. Normally we would at this point have some kind of wave height measurements that have been released. Our current time, let's hit refresh, up in Alaska right now is 11:31 p.m. Now the tsunami arrival times are basically going on through right now. Where the red place mark is here on the map, that is where the current warning is. The advisory is spread all the way down here into the coast of the United States. Well, let's get that out of there. Or I'm sorry, the coast of Alaska next to Haida Gwaii. And it spreads all the way out over into the central Aleutians. And it spreads down to Hawaii. Hawaii's just under a watch. Advisories are more serious than a watch. So a watch is just watch out for it. An advisory is, hey, most likely something's going to be coming. A warning is, something's here. So it's kind of like the weather. You're watching for it, then you're hearing about it, and it's coming your way, and then it's warning time. It's actually here. So far, we at least have one warning. It's the first tsunami I've had to report on up here in this area in years. The only good news I have for you on this, population-wise, extremely limited. Extremely limited. Now, once you get up here to the north, you get up into Anchorage, you got a lot of people right in here. And likely they felt it. I bet a lot of people felt it. I would say I bet, but I think we can actually click on the earthquake info to get the felt reports, how many there are. 250 felt reports out here. So maybe the people in Anchorage didn't feel it? But then again, it's late night. How many of them are going to open up and jump on to the USGS site to make an earthquake felt report for something that just maybe shook Anchorage ever so slightly? Now, with the tsunami threat, you can bet everybody's been made aware of it now. And if they haven't, you should probably let them know, just in case. They won't fault you. People who live along the coast of Oregon and California and Washington and Haida Gwaii up in Canada and Vancouver, they won't fault you for messaging them a text message or something, or maybe a phone call that lets them know, hey, you may want to check. I don't know if this is going to be on the news. Here, just go to the tsunami.gov and take a look for yourself. And it's such an easy website to remember, tsunami.gov. I don't promote the government normally, but this site tends to work most of the time. And it's fairly accurate in giving us all our statements real time. The buoys are a different story. The buoys, let's get that back open here. National Data Buoy Center. We're checking the buoys for the propagation of the wave and the shock wave. Two different things. Shock wave propagates, actual wave in the water propagates. A shock wave can spread out quickly, within an hour, across the planet, like what we're seeing here. All these buoys in event mode. But also mixed in with that, up in Alaska, are going to be the actual wave measurements that are showing up. So let's go click on a few of these and see what they show up right next to the earthquake. Well, the red marker here is the detection of the quake, and it's in event mode. So let's click on the event mode. It'll tell us how high of a wave is detected there. Now this is in meters. We're going from 4480 meters. Or no, we're starting at 4487. That's baseline. 4487 roughly. And then it goes down first. Well, of course, that's somewhat normal. Well, you can see it go up first too, but goes down first. Down about 4 or 5 meters. 12 feet. Then it goes up by 20. Then down by 30. Then up by 30. Wait, this is feet now. In meters, it's 10. It goes down by 10 meters, up by 10 meters, down by 10 meters. But a meter is 3 feet. So we're talking about a fair, significant disturbance right there at the epicenter. Water column height at the station, 4486. This is in the first 15 seconds of the event mode now. So the first 15 seconds, it goes from 4486 and falls down to 4483. And then goes back up, and then back down, and then back up, and then back down, and it's breaking and going and wobbling back and forth. But the first thing it does is it actually drops. So there's a part where it went down, apparently. Interesting. That's very interesting. That's right next to the quake. Now, we're going to zoom in a little bit more, and we're going to go over here right up into the station next to the quake. Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm clicking on this. Do you see how it's a little bit less of an event mode? Right? The other one was way big. This one's smaller. But we're a station away, aren't we? That's good news to see that. Let's go click on it, though. So we're starting at 4196. Almost 4197. This is in meters. And then we go up. And the up goes to 4197. So that's not that big of a wave out in the ocean. But out in the ocean is different than on land. So when the wave comes in, it can actually, a small disturbance out in the ocean can actually go and swell up into 5 or 10 feet. So 1 foot can translate to 5 or 10 feet when it comes in on land, depending on the speed and the depth of the water. But the good news is this is way less. If this was big like what it was at the first one that I just clicked on, right next to the earthquake itself, then I would really be worried that it would be a huge wave spreading out across the area. Instead, right at the earthquake epicenter, we get the big shakeup, the big wave goes out from there, but it's not propagating beyond there. There's not a fracture that's going out that's also causing a wave. Like in Japan, there was several hundred miles, or maybe not 100 miles, maybe 100 miles that broke and uplifted all at once. It wasn't just a few mile area. It was a huge area that broke and uplifted. This is slightly different. That's the good news. Bad news is we've got tsunami warnings actually going. The shock wave itself went all the way across the United States over the east coast of the U.S. You see the buoys in event mode over here from the shock wave. That's not a water wave going over that far. That happened within the first hour here. I'm going to go back over one more time. We'll go check the National Data Buoy Center really quick. Oh, we were just there. Let's go back over to tsunami.gov. Just type it in. Tsunami.gov. Been coming in very handy tonight. We've got info statements 2, advisory, warning watch 3. I'm looking for wave heights. That's what I want to see. That's the info that will help us all. Well, right now they've got times and advisories. Look at these towns. Sandpoint, we've already come and gone on that. We're pretty much to these areas. Sitka, Yakutat, Valdez, Cordova, St. Paul, Homer. Those will be areas that you watch next, going up through Alaska. Going over on the east coast, or over to the east along the coast of the United States, we're going to have to go over and click on these. Alaska, BC, and West Coast. South Alaska and the Alaska Peninsula, Pacific Coast from Hinchbrook Entrance, Alaska to Unimak Pass, Alaska. Tsunami advisory is in effect for southeast Alaska and the inner and outer coast from Cape Decision to Cape Fairweather. South Alaska and the Alaska Peninsula, Pacific Coast from Cape Fairweather to Hinchbrook Entrance. Aleutian Islands. Okay, the Aleutian Islands from Smolga Pass, Alaska to Amchitka Pass, Alaska. For other U.S., Canadian coast, and North America, the level of tsunami danger is being evaluated. Further information will be provided in supplementary messages. Evaluated still. Man, this is taking a little bit longer than I would expect. I guess they're waiting. They're waiting for arrivals. They're literally waiting for people to report it in.
8.0.
Old school. Shouldn't we have like a satellite that does this at this point with some kind of LiDAR, laser detected range LiDAR? It works like radar, but it's laser. Why can't we have that if Elon Musk has the satellites up there with the lasers already? Just to detect waves, we don't have to point the lasers down at the ground on people. I'm talking about directed energy weapons down on earthquakes. Yeah, no big deal. But now let's be serious. This big earthquake, this is the biggest one that we've had in years. It's the big earthquake right in the time where we're having a bunch of deep earthquakes, and we're looking for a big earthquake to strike over to the east at Haida Gwaii. Haida Gwaii is the tiny little island right here. So I'm going to chalk it up as an extremely large quake at a time where the plate's under unrest right next to an area where I issued the warning. First one in years. Let's get this saved as a video, and this time let's actually go over and check the chat room and see what everybody's saying. So this does help from time to time to see the chat and for us all to see what's going on. Sometimes people get information and sometimes I just don't see it. Sometimes 1,000 eyes is better than one set of eyes. I don't even know how many people are in my Twitch chat right now, but I would think there's probably a lot. Yeah, I see people talking about it going off. Yeah. Anything expected in mainland Alaska? Now, yeah, it's a good question. Yes. But it should be less than what goes down to the coast of the United States. I would think this is out in the plate boundary in the Pacific, so it's going to stay out on the plate boundary in the Pacific. Now, you're going to see an increase. Let's go ahead and put it at a 1 magnitude increase across Alaska. Everywhere where there were 4s, you're going to see 5s. So it means there is potential for 5.0 to come into mainland Alaska. But your earthquake veterans at this point, a 5. I mean, is that even enough for me to issue a warning on? I guess it is if it's going to knock things off shelves. Okay? But I would watch for the 6+ activity to come into California pretty soon. Next several days. West Coast United States should light up with activity. I'm going to get a new forecast out and get that together in the next few days. Well, not few days. Tomorrow, I will have a new forecast out on today. The 29th is tomorrow already for me. So I will get that recorded in the next 24 hours or less and get it out over on YouTube for people to watch it back and share it. Look, other people need to know at times where we're looking for large earthquake activity. People all around the Pacific need to know. There's tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people around the Pacific who want to know when there's the potential for an extremely large earthquake and when there's the potential for a tsunami. And we talked about the potential for both this week. And I don't talk about the potential for mega quakes and tsunamis every week. Normally we're forecasting for 5s and 6s, and at the biggest, we're forecasting for 7s. So to go up there into the 8 range and to get it down within a week, here we are. It's the sun. The sun is a main player in why we're going through major seismic unrest. In case you don't know about that, long story on the sun. Basically, simply put, charged particles come from the sun and get caught in the north and south poles electromagnetic magnetosphere. And that gets taken down to the core of the earth. That power. And that power is powering a blowtorch inside the core of the earth. A plasma blowtorch powered by the sun. It's not a solid ball of metal down in the core of the earth. And it's not molten. It's vaporized heaviest elements. Vaporized nickel, vaporized iron, vaporized uranium, the heaviest elements, and blasted away by this plasma torch. And just like a plasma ball that you would put your hand on, that electricity comes up out from the core and goes out to the edges of the plasma ball. And in this case, of course, that's the plates. So I hope you understand. We're going through it because the sun is throwing it at us. We're going up and up and up. Now we're going to spread out, and we're going to see this drop off quakes over into the United States. Now, elsewhere on the planet, that's why I have to do a new forecast for tomorrow, because there's so many other areas that are going to see a big increase as well. This isn't the only spot. We're dealing with major unrest going on right now. Time for me to save this as a video and get it out over on YouTube. Word up and much love. If the wave reaches any further, I will get back on and do an update. If you live on the West Coast, you got to pay attention to tsunami.gov. If you live over in Alaska or in Hawaii, you've got to pay attention to tsunami.gov. Your local news too, but will they be on top of it? I don't know. Tsunami.gov is. Watch over the next few hours, and I will update if any wave starts to hit. Right now, it looks like there's good news. The wave is hitting up in the Aleutians, going out into the middle of nowhere. No wave reported over in the other direction, heading out over towards the coast of the United States. Yet, knock on wood, that's good news. You guys are awesome. Everybody in chat, you are awesome. You are awesome for being here and carrying at 2 a.m. Central Time, while the rest of the world's asleep and not even paying attention. A new aftershock has struck 6.1. Yeah. Let me get the rest of the quakes on here so we can see the rest of them. We're right now just looking at the big ones. But the rest of the activity is speaking volumes for what's going on around the rest of the planet right now. We're going through it in case you didn't know. Now you know. Word up, much love. You need to remember one thing from this whole broadcast. Don't be scared. You need to be prepared. Now, how can you be prepared for earthquakes? You can see it coming your way. You can watch this energy develop over the course of days. And that's what all the arrows are on here on the map for. It's kind of like people used to be scared of the weather and really fearful of the weather. They thought it was random. Once you figure out the principles behind meteorology, all of a sudden, a storm that was totally scary and supernatural now becomes just something that's intimidating, but you can prepare for. So, preparing for earthquakes, what do? You need to know a place to go in case it's a huge earthquake to protect yourself from falling objects. A table or a desk. But are you going to remember to do it? Or are you going to run around and scream earthquake like 99% of the people do? Word to the wise, everybody already knows an earthquake's hitting. You don't have to run around and scream earthquake. I've never felt a quake of any size, so I don't know what it's like to be in an earthquake. But I would imagine it's pretty adrenaline rush and pretty, I don't know, not fun. So I would think that it would be something you could prepare for, but actually when it hits, you're going to have to remember your training to go underneath something, as opposed to run around or to go to a door or something else. They don't recommend to go to door frames. They say they never did. Professionals have pulled a Mandela effect. They say they've never said that you're supposed to take shelter underneath a door frame. Okay, so table or a desk. Now, there's something else you can do that can take the edge off after an earthquake. Big earthquake hits, power goes out, infrastructure is damaged, people might be injured. You need to have an emergency kit. The emergency kit, again, you should have the stuff already in your house. The bandages and the first aid and the sanitation, especially sanitation after this past year. But all of that should be able to be into a bag. Change of clothes and a set of shoes. That's so important. Make sure it's seasonal specific. The food and the water, I would have a couple days worth of food, and it would be the prepackaged kind, the granola bars and fruit roll-ups and easy to carry, watertight, high energy. You're not going to be cooking a steak over a fire pit on the first night of a disaster like that. I hope not. So water-wise, though, you would have a couple days worth of water. That's going to be pretty heavy, about 7 pounds per gallon of water. So you probably have a gallon of water and make it last you for a couple days. But the basics, food and water, change of clothes, set of shoes, first aid, sanitation, and then all the other crap, the set of keys and the extra set of keys. your important documents, an extra ID, an extra debit card. Those things also will help. Put them into a bag. Why not? You'll end up using it most likely for something else other than an earthquake, like severe weather, fire evacuations out on the West Coast, sometimes flooding. Sometimes if you just lose your ID or your keys, you'll be like, yes, I've got an extra set in my emergency kit. All right, I'm not trying to get too harpy or anything. I'm just reminding you. Please do it, especially now when we're going through it. Time to upload to YouTube. See you guys over there at the premiere. Peace out.